Once upon a time, a young man thought, I wish I could make this point cloud turn into words, but I don't know how. Luckily for him, there was an answer. Click your object, head over to the Geometry Nodes tab, and hit New. Let's start with the String to Curves node. Here you can use the folder to choose your fonts. I'm going to set this to center, middle, and midpoint because that's just easier for later. In String, you can type whatever it is you want. Size, character spacing, word spacing, all of that. For this, we're going to keep it nice and simple. Everything else is at defaults. From here, just so we can see things, I'm going to plug this straight into a group output. And there we have just our outline of text. Drag that over there for now. So let's fill the curve with a Fill Curve node. Now from here, we'll take this into a Realize instance. Because when you make text like this, each letter is a separate instance, and we need real geometry to do the next step, which is distribute points on faces. Now when we do this, we don't have very many points. So if we just drag the density up, you can see it builds more points. So this is a pretty arbitrary number. Basically, you just want it high enough that your text looks good. I'm going to put it at 6,000. Higher density makes for clearer text, but it also increases processing requirements. So play around, see what makes you happy. From here, we're going to run this into a set position node, and we'll connect that back in. Now from here, we're going to have a noise texture. Now if we plug this in here, you can see it's off to the right upper. So to fix that, we need a subtract node with all of these set to 0.5, and that just brings it back to the middle. But we need to be able to control how strong the noise is. So move this over a bit, and we'll put in here a scale node, which is part of the vector math node. You can see it's one of the many choices on offer. So here, we can make it stronger and weaker. So if this is set to 0, there's no noise. And this slider here is how we'll animate the basic version of this. Now, if we set this up, if I hit play, nothing happens. It's not actually animated yet. To do that, we're going to set the noise texture to 4D, and that gives us this slider. We'll control this using a scene time node, and plugging this into a divide node. Because the W moves quite quickly, and we want animation we can follow, not that skitters around. I'm going to set this to about 200, plug that into the W, and now if I hit play, it animates. Lovely. So now we can actually set up our animation. I'm going to drag this up a bit so I can see. I'm going to set this to 200 frames. And we're going to set up our keyframes on this scale, just to say at this point, be text, at this point, be noise. So we're going to start off with noise. I'm going to say about 10, hit I to keyframe. Starts at 10, I'm going to go to 25, and hit I again, and that'll be where our transition to text starts. So let's go to 75, and here set it to 0. And because I have auto keying on down here, it's automatically updated the keyframe to the new value I put in. So let's keep it at text for say 50. So 125. I'll hit I to keyframe that again so it holds the text. And then 175. We will set this back up to 10. And just for completion's sake, I'm going to also keyframe that at the very end. You don't technically need to, but I prefer to. So now if we hit play, we have our animation. So now we have this. We just need to add an instance on points node. and some mesh to instance on the points. I'm going to add a cube, and the cube's a bit big, so set this to say 0.025, and here we'll add a set material node. Pick whatever material you like. Now if I switch over to render preview mode, we have color. And if we play that now this is the simple version, so let's make it a bit more complicated. Okay, so as you can see, I've slightly rearranged some things, and that's just because I know what's coming next. So in this section, I want to show you how to transition from noise to text to noise to different text. There's a bit more setup, but it's not too bad. We're using the exact same setup we had before, I've just rearranged things. So what we need to do is add another set position node after this first one. So in here, set position, and plug that in to the points. Instead of setting our animation here, we're going to set it at a separate vector mix vector node, my apologies. And this will be plugged into the position node of the set position node, not the offset. Currently, everything is just one tiny dot at 0, 0, 0. That's fine, don't worry too much. What we need to do is add a position node here, and we're going to plug this into the A of this mix node. Now if we set the factor to 0, we have our text back. And if we set it to 1, everything's at a single point. So what we're going to do is remove these keyframes, delete keyframe, and then clear keyframes. So then now the scale has no keyframes whatsoever, and we'll set this to our maximum. So I'm going to say 10. So now if we go from 0 to 1, we don't have our text, and that's because the GeoNode system has no way of knowing where these points were when they started. So what we're going to do is drag from this points here to a sample index node. And into this, we're going to plug another position node into the value, and an index node into the index. I'm going to set this to vector and keep this one on point. And this will just give us a way of knowing where these points were when they started before we applied this noise. So plug this into B of the mix vector. And now if we adjust the factor, we get our text back. And functionally, this is no different to how we had it before, and we're controlling it with the scale. The difference is, we can now add more text. So what we're going to do is just duplicate this whole section here, and we'll bring it down. I'm just going to bring these up a bit and make it a bit easier to look at. Okay, so text 1, and I'm going to change that text so that you can see the difference. So we have two texts. How do we access them? Basically, with another mix vector node. So instead of plugging this into B here, I'm going to plug this into A, the second one into B, and plug this into B. So now, factor of 0 is noise, factor of 1 is text. And then this mix node controls which text. So instead of keyframing this scale, we're going to keyframe this for when it's text versus noise, and keyframe this to tell it when to switch text. So let's do that now. So let's keyframe the noise first, and then we'll keyframe the text transition after. So the noise, we're going to want to start at 0 if we're starting with noise. So same as last time, I'm going to use the same timings. Basically it's 50 in transition and 50 holding. That's arbitrary. Use whatever keyframe pattern you like, that's just what I'm using. So I'm going to set that at 0 at 25. This is identical to last time. At 75 it becomes 1, and again we're not going to be changing the text yet, we'll do that in a moment. At 125, we'll keyframe this again at 1, and then at 175, set this to 0. And so that gets us the same transition as last time. So we have that transition, text to noise. Okay, so let's make this arbitrarily longer. And we're going to go 50 from here. And set this at, make this 1. Add 50. Keep this at 1. And then add our 25. And have this back at 0. And I'll make this end at 300. Whoops. Make this end at 300. So now if we play this, so now we just need to keyframe the transition. So basically I want to come in here to when the text is unrecognizable, let's say about there, and keyframe this 0. And that just means it's going to hold at the original text until that point. And then before it starts forming words again, so maybe about here-ish, bring that up to 1. And again, because of auto-keying, it's auto-keyed. So now, during that noise transition, it's changing text. And that's pretty damn cool. And the other advantage of this system is that you can now change the scale as you like, and you can also keyframe the scale in addition. So if I wanted to, say, have my scale be massive at the start and the end, if I say put this at... Well, that's not really massive, is it? I oversold it. Let's make this 25. And I'll keyframe that. And 25 again at the end. Keyframe that. But then for the middle bit, once it gets close, once the text is on, say, let's set this down to 5. And then come to our second bit of text. Set that also at 5. So now when we run this, text is massive, but in the in-between bit, it's only small. And that's basically it for multiple text inputs. Now, there is another stage with a couple more fun things we can do. So here is the third version that I'm going to show you today. I'm not going to rebuild it again because the keyframe's getting tiring, to be honest. But fundamentally, 3 things have changed. For one, rather than just having 2 text inputs plugged in like this, as we did before, I have a third. And you can link this as many times as you want. Anytime you want to add another display of text, just swap from this being here to this being in the mix, the new one in the B of the mix, and connecting that in, and then keyframing the factor here as you did with the first one. And you could repeat that infinitely, basically. Just duplicating this lot and this mix. So that is very, very simple. The other things I want to show you. One is if you want multiple lines of text. So if I play this through, multiple lines of text. Now to do that is actually quite simple. If we come in here, we can see, rather than having the text written here, I have string inputs, a special characters node, and a join strings node. Line break just means it will be on separate lines for each individual string you input. So it's not that tricky, but it's very useful. The other thing I wanted to show you is up here. Previously, we've been using our distribute points on faces node from our text, plugging this into the set position. This time what I've done is I've used an icosphere, a mesh to volume node, and a distribute points in volume node to get our cluster of points to start with. And the basic advantage of that is if you have a pre-made animated noise that you like, if you want it to start from a shape rather than from text, if you want more control over the random noise you have, use that noise as a starting point and then set the density. The tricky thing is, especially when you start doing this, is the densities obviously won't match, because this icosphere here has a lot more face area than this bit of text does. So you can see here, because I've already got it set up, this density is 6,000, and to make it match, this density is 20,000. And when they're both pieces of similar size text, that won't matter. But you can see, if you have a look through, all of these texts have different densities. And that's basically because if your new geometry has less points than the starting geometry, you'll end up with spare points located at 0, 0, 0. And I can demonstrate that once you, if we let this play. When it gets to here, if we zoom in on this text a bit, you can see here, there's a random little spot in the middle. And that happens to be, if I turn this on, at 0, 0, 0. Don't mind my camera getting in the way. And that's basically because the new geometry has less points than the icosphere it's based on. So all the extra points from the icosphere are getting placed here because they don't know where else to go. So to fix that, we're going to come back in here. Now, this is the one that has the issue. It's text, which is this section. So if I come in here, I'm going to make that little preview a bit bigger. Basically, because the issue is the word text has too few points, we're going to ramp this up until the spots in the middle go away. So let's just say 20,000 for now. No. 30,000. No. 40,000. Okay. Now, the other half of this is if the new geometry has more points than the starting geometry, you'll lose parts of the text. So then you just need to basically play with it until it's right. So once you've found a point where it's not too many, I find it easy to toggle it back down because you can see quite easily when you have the right number of points. So for this, 30,700-ish is the sweet spot, because if I go too far down, that point in the middle comes back. I haven't yet found a way to perfectly automate that, but it's not too difficult. Once per text, you set it up, all in relation to your starting geometry. Now if I come back out a bit, if I play this now, actually, play this now from the start. That's basically it. I will give you a part 3.5, which is node groups. Because obviously this is a bit cluttered, let's say, and a lot of the nodes we're using in this section are duplicates. So I will show you briefly how to get rid of some of those duplicates and just make it easier to look at and a bit less repetitive, especially when you start to duplicate more and more and more. Basically, what we want to do is all of these are the same nodes. Each one has a different text input and a different density. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab these and put them in a group. And what we're going to do is we're going to drag this string input to our group input and drag this density into our group input as well. So now we hit tab and leave the group and rearrange our space. We can see that all of these nodes are in this little group, which is just really convenient and saves a lot of space and is just easier to navigate, especially if you want to have, 20 different lots of text. You're going to be really grateful for this. What we're going to do to duplicate this itself, change the string to what's in here. In this case, it's text. So we'll just make this text. I'm just going to copy the density. If we just plug this in here, and now we can delete those. And bring this over here, bring this over here. So much neater. Now this one is still the same. Because these are just plugged into the string, if we just duplicate this again, and rather than typing it, drag this string into the string here, and once again we will copy that, plug this into B. We can delete these extraneous ones, not the join strings, though we need that, and bring that over here. So now, if I just rearrange a little, if I just rearrange a little bit more, it's much easier to navigate this node tree. So that's everything I'm going to show you today. If you have any questions, do let me know. Hopefully this is clear enough. Have a lot of very, very good fun. If you make anything from this, tell me about it in the comments, and I will have a look, because I'm excited to see what you make. That's enough for now. Hope you've had fun and learned something. Have a good day. Bye.